Thank you all for joining us and welcome to the Tuesday's edition of Shagalinku TV. My name is Ambassador Emmanuel Gabari and it's good to have you here. Today we'll be looking at the election, or should I say the position gotten by Dr. NGOZI Okonjo-IWEALA, in the World Trade Organization office. And it's been drawing a lot of, I wouldn't say controversy, but it's been drawing a whole lot of attention. A lot of people have been talking. Nigerians, particularly, have also been reeling out some things they expect um, from now till the end of the program. We'll just be looking at it as NOI, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and her position as a DG in WTO. So I know a lot has been said, and then happily she's also in the country on a working visit to first thank the presidency and Nigeria for nominating her, and then secondly to also reel out some of the things she'll be doing, as the program goes on and all that. So it's just a good time for us to be looking at this, and we'll also be looking at what it entails for Africa, particularly for Nigeria. I've heard a lot of discussions, across board. So much is being expected from her, and I'm like, hey, this is an international appointment, and then, well, there are things she might do to maybe save Africa. People are still looking at it from the angle when she was a former minister of finance and how she helped Nigeria, out of a few debts here and there. But this is on a different level anyway. And then my panelists will just be doing justice to all of that. So keep your comments coming. Let's know what you think about the position of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala in the WTO, what it spells for Africa and Nigeria particularly. Do you think anything will really change in the world economy vis-a-vis Nigeria and Africa? I have my guests here, Mr. Leonard Otuonye Ugbajah. He's the executive director for Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy here in Nigeria, Abuja precisely. And I have Lady Funke Treasure, one of our very regular here. She's the lead consultant for Yellow Bloom Consulting here in Nigeria still and Lagos. And together we'll be talking about these. The numbers will be scrolling on the screen for those of you who would like to join via text line. For those of you who want to drop your comments, just do them right here on the comment section. It will pop up on the screen, and we will be reading them as it goes. If you have questions for our guests, sure, just drop it there, and we will read them, and they will be responded. Let me start, like they say, ladies first. Hi, Lady Funke. Good to see you again.
Hello, Ima. How are you doing? How is Kano today?
Ghana is terribly hot. We are there. We can't complain. Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with you before I come to Leo. A lot has been said. This program is also made possible because this is the International Women's Month, like they say, even though they've had International Women's Day on the 8th of March, and then day before yesterday was also Mother's Happy Mother's Sunday or thereabout. So much is happening for women. So let's even look at it from the angle of Dr. Ngozi Iweala's victory from the women angle. What do you think we should begin to do to replicate more, maybe for girl child education and women empowerment? What do you think we should begin to do to have many more of the Amina Mohammeds, Ngozi Wialas, and the rest to come?
Thank you. What should we be doing more? I like to start with a quote from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie in the book We're All Feminists. And she said, I quote, for centuries, the world divided human beings into two groups and then proceeded to exclude and oppress one group. Um, in Africa, basically, there is the patriarchal wall and barrier that women have to scale to meet up with societal expectations. Women are expected to put in double the efforts, if not even triple the efforts that men put in to get things done. Having said that, NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA is a blazing example of how one can shatter all the barriers along the way to achieving one's dream. How can we replicate this sort of thing? I would say education, education, education. You've got to get the girls educated so that they can have a voice. And when they have a voice, they will be included at the table. They will get a space at the table. The more women get a space at the table to speak up, to talk about and make decisions that are critical to their existence and to humanity, the better it is for the woman, for or womanhood. And so the only way we can replicate this sort of feat that NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA has, achieved is to keep the girls educated. It's for our legislators to see that a siege on schools in the northern part of Nigeria is a misnomer, is a tragedy that is already happening, and the cascading effect of it in the future will be disastrous, even more than we're seeing now, because a lot of our children, especially the girls, don't want to go to school anymore. They don't want to be adopted. Our parents are saying, no, I don't want my children to go to school when I'm not sure of their security. So the best way to replicate is to make the environment, again, the second factor, to make the environment safe for our children to continue to school. NGOZI didn't get there by being a trader. Yes, she's the DG of the World Trade Organization, but it will take you to go to school and get properly knowledge and properly schooled. For here is the more we educate our girls and we give them a voice in the society and we include them at the table, the better for all of us, the more NGOZIs we will have.
Thank you very much, Lady Funke. I'll come back to Leo. I know we've been having these discussions back and forth for a while now, even before the topic, we decided to fix a date for this. So take us through what you first, Dr. NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA is in town. She's in the country. So take us what this is for Nigeria and Africa, because so much is being expected from her. A lot of discussions going on. You hear people say this and that. What does it truly mean for you, Leonard?
Okay, thank you very much. So like I always like to say, whenever I'm confronted with this question, is to say, Dr. NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA is the DG of WTO, World Trade Organization. It is not a political appointment to represent Nigeria in a body, as you have maybe like Nigeria's permanent representative to the UN. It's an international public service role. She's employed as a public servant, just that the rules require that she be nominated by a member country of the WTO before she could contest for that position. So I have said that just to say that she serves the interest of all the members of the WTO, not the interest of Nigeria, not the interest of Africa. But having said that, I would also add that the office, or any office for that matter, would to a large extent where the coloration or the mannerisms of the person who occupies that office. So to that extent, we expect that she would pay a lot of attention to issues that concern Africa, that concern Nigeria, and issues that concern the developing world at the WTO, because basically that is her background, that's where she's coming from, so she will not be aloof to those issues. And going forward, you see that she's already beginning to deal with some of those issues. For example, she's talked a lot about aid for trade, using aid for trade to develop production capacity and export in developing countries like Nigeria. If you've listened to her messages since she came into Nigeria in the past 2 days, in fact, before she came to Nigeria, she's been saying that Nigeria needs to produce more, Nigeria needs to export more to take advantage of the global trading system. And that's the apt message for us. Now, how would the WTO contribute in that quest to produce more and to export more? Basically, using technical assistance in aid for trade, you could have targeted assistance in the areas of maybe policy development, policy implementation, maybe around export and trade facilitation, and all those kind of issues. So those are the kind of soft assistance, really. You're not expecting that the WTO or Dr. NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA will then come and possibly construct the kind of infrastructure that we need or solve the power problem. No, that's not going to happen, you know. But using the WTO aid for trade mechanism, we could always receive help from the WTO in the areas of policy formulation, policy implementation, policy analysis, and basically just optimizing the domestic business environment to be able to produce more, produce better quality, and to be able to export more. So those are that's one key area where her appointment would be of help to Nigeria. And of course, it can be that help or that assistance cannot be disproportionately extended to Nigeria. It's just part of what the WTO does as an organization. So we'll address the others as we go along.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I come to Funke again to ask her my next set of questions, I'd also like to ask you, when she was going through the turbulent waters, were you worried that at some point that Nigeria might not clutch that very coveted position, you know, having to face former President Donald Trump's rejection and having to now get a whole lot coming from the Kenyan co-contestant and all that? What was going at the back of your mind? Did you feel at any point in time? We didn't doubt her credentials, just like Funke said, but you know, with these things, it could end up in politics and pettiness at times and all that. So what was going through your mind when she was just dabbling into the turbulent waters?
Okay, that's very interesting. So I was a keen follower of the process. So just a little background. Nigeria already had a nomination for the position of the DG of WTO in the person of Ambassador Frederick Aga, who at the moment is a Deputy Director General. But before that, he was Nigeria's ambassador to the WTO for about 12 years or thereabout. Then he was appointed a Deputy Director General by the immediate past DG. Every DG is expected to appoint his or her Deputy Director Generals. Now, he had that nomination, and the African Union had a procedure that would lead to Africa presenting a consensus candidate at that election, because Africa felt it was our turn to produce a DG, having not produced a DG since the WTO started in 1995. So Nigeria's nomination and that of Egypt, Benin, I think those were the three front runners submitted to the African Union. And then suddenly Nigeria indicated its interest to substitute the name of Ambassador Aga for that of Dr. NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA. And that was actually done out of turn. If you look at it, you know, the time for submission had passed. So that raised some controversy. But okay, Nigeria still went ahead and submitted its nomination to the WTO. But what that also meant was that Africa didn't present a consensus candidate. So everybody had to go to WTO to slug it out. So at the WTO, honestly, when her name came up, I felt she would have an upper hand against most, if not all, the contestants. Then the Kenyan lady, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, Mohammed came in, and then she has been a veteran. She's been Kenya's ambassador to the WTO. She's been a chair of the WTO General Council. She's an insider, so to say, you know, with enormous trade background, you know, just like the Korean lady. So it was when she came into the race, I mean, the Kenyan woman, that I felt, well, now we have Nigeria's strongest contender, but when she was eliminated, and it was then almost like a straight horse race between NOI and the Kenya and the South Korean woman, I knew it was a done deal. But of course, it's a highly politically charged process. So we saw the game that American played. And, like I mentioned to you some time ago, that people try to understand what American did by blocking Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA's appointment. First, a little background is that at the WTO, decisions are arrived at by consensus. So that means every country would have to agree, so to say. So if one country refuses to join that consensus, then you need to stop the process and then try to cajole, keep negotiating until there's consensus. Now, but more often than not, the kind of veto, if you like to use that word, not technically, the kind of disagreement that stalls processes is when a powerful country like the US tells you no. Then you just have to stop and listen. Now, people who are wondering, what was the US trying to achieve? Many people say this because she's Nigerian, they don't like Nigeria, but that's not really the case. Number one, personally, I thought the American strategy was disruption. That was what they were playing at, because the US has put certain reforms on the table at the WTO for some years now, So basically, they wanted WTO to be remade in such a way that it better serves the American interest. And they feel that the way the WTO is running at the moment doesn't serve their interest. For example, they feel that the WTO court, we call it the dispute settlement body, encroaches beyond its original mandate to make rules that affect America's trade interests negatively. They are bothered about the increasing profile of China and the fact that in the WTO, China is a developing country. And once you have a developing country status, it means there are certain flexibilities that are available to you in conducting your commercial policy that is not available to the developed countries. So the US was worried about these issues, and they wanted fundamental reforms that would also see manufacturing subsidies or state-owned enterprises that enjoy some government support in manufacturing brought within the discipline of the WTO. So they had their grievances, and I thought what they were playing at was not necessarily who became the DG, but making sure that in the process of selecting the DG, they were able to disrupt the system such that you have to come back and take their concerns on board before you could select who a DG would be. So yes, what Trump played wasn't surprising, and what President Biden has done by giving his support to NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA is not also surprising. But I must sound this note that, while the approach of President Donald Trump was disruptive, wanted to disrupt the system and so that he could get what he wanted, the approach of President Biden might not be that disruptive, but those issues, those concerns that the US had are still alive. And I assure you that the US will not be in a hurry to drop those concerns, especially as it relates to the status of China in the WTO. So yes, these are complex dynamics of international politics, but it wasn't anything personal against Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA. In fact, if there was any personal slant, to it will be this. So the fact that by orientation, by outlook, by training, by ideology, Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA has been a multilateralist. And what that means is that people who believe in collective solutions to problems. So let us come together and agree on how to solve this global problem. So that's multilateralism. Now, in contrast, Donald Trump was a unilateralist. So his American first philosophy meant that the US would only engage where and only to the extent that it serves the American interest. So that was a fundamental ideological divide between the two of them. And people who are in Trump's cabinet also had that mindset. So if it's not going to serve American interests, we'll pull it down. For example, they pulled out of the WHO, pulled out of the Paris climate change agreement. So it was a question of, if this is not going to serve our interests, we don't want to be a part of it. So it's possible also that they were looking for a director general who would serve American interests first of all, above other interests. And if you look at the relationship between America and South Korea, you actually realize that beyond the obvious claim they made that the South Korean woman had more trade background, you also realize that she was close to the American bureaucracy, under Donald Trump. So it wasn't just about having direct trade background, but also the fact that the US is a strong ally of South Korea, and I can go on and on, but that made it more complex. The fact that US is a strong ally of South Korea also made it more difficult for the South Korean candidate, because what that also tells you is that countries like China, for example, will not be ready to support her, because they are also having this supremacy battle within the South Asian region, So it's a bit of a complex scenario, but at the end of the day, we thank God that the better candidate, because I think Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA was the better candidate. That the better candidate won the day. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leonard. I was going to ask Funke some questions, because some comments are here and I needed her to respond to it. But then we'll just go on. When she eventually joins, her network has gone off, but if she joins us back, she will. This one is from Sheppy Moore, also known as Yomi from London. It says, "Hello, people." Yomi is one of our very regular viewer from London. Thank you so much, Yomi, for joining us. And yes, you can drop your comments on the comment section, or you can also drop it on the text line. I got some text messages here. I'll just quickly read them. You respond to these ones, and then we'll move on as we'll wait for Funke to join us. This one here says, "Hi to your guest. I'd like to also say congratulations to Dr. NGOZI Okonjo-IWEALA. I think Nigerians should not expect too much, because her portfolio is already stipulated and she knows what to do." This is from Nkechi in Enugu. Thank you very much. What do you have to say to that, Leonard?
That's very correct. So I like to always sound that note of warning that people shouldn't think that the balance in Nigerian politics is that this is our time to chop. So it's not really our time. The dynamics of that position is that your country needs to nominate you, but you're not going to serve as an ambassador of your country. Yeah, for goodness sake, Nigeria has an ambassador to the WTO, who comes from the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. So that is the person who oversees or protects Nigeria's interests at the WTO. The fact that the DG is from your country doesn't give you any special right or any special privilege.
Okay. I'm still waiting for Funke to join us, but let's take this message here. It's from Fred Ogudun Osondu. He says, "It's a world body. Why is the American interest so important? There are so many other issues more urgent than these American concerns. WTO must adopt some level of independence with Dr. Okonjo's government."
Okay, yeah, my good friend Fred, thank you for that comment. So the dynamics of global politics recognizes the fact that even though all countries are equal, but some are more equal than others, and it's not. It's a reality in life. We say all fingers are not equal. So ordinarily, the WTO should not take undue account of the American interest. Every country come to the table with their interest, and they were all supposed to negotiate and find a meeting point, among all of us. But you realize that some countries wield more power in the international system than the others. And I keep making this argument. I explored this deeply in my in my MA thesis, which looked at the WTO and the role of power politics in international relations. And recently in an article, conference paper I presented at the Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria. That's the power dynamics, to say that what you need to survive in the international system is to acquire your own power, because we can't pontificate about whose interest is more served than the other. The only answer to power in the international system is counterpower. So, for example, the US wants something done, China doesn't want it done, or the US, the EU, and Australia come together, they want something done, but India says no, and they have to pause. Why would they have to pause? They will have to pause simply because India has acquired enough clout in the international system to be able to assert their own interest and have it listened to. What is this? What is the component of this clout? The components of this clout is your economic strength. How powerful are you economically? How powerful are you military-wise? These two factors, if you're respected, maybe because you're a major global trading power, maybe because other countries rely a lot on your economy. And I like to use the example of India because sometimes we think they are our mates, so to say. India is, and I'll use the example of this COVID-19 vaccine diplomacy at the moment to tell you that India is a major player in the vaccine diplomacy for two reasons. Number one, India has developed its own local vaccine to COVID-19. Number two, India is the leading manufacturer of generic drugs in the world. So India already has a license from AstraZeneca to manufacture that vaccine in India, generic versions of it. So they don't just manufacture for their consumption, but they also export to other countries. So if the US, for example, would depend on India for its pharmaceutical supplies, for example, when the hydrochloroquine rave was going on, India muted the idea of placing export restriction on the export of hydrochloroquine. Trump issued a veiled threat, and India backed down. Now, if India had wanted to continue with that war, the US would be forced to come to the negotiating table. So it's a question of balancing your national interest and your capacity, your power to assert those interests in the international system. If you're a small country or you're a poorer country and you're not able to assert power in terms of your economic might or your military might, then you need to adopt other strategies. For example, banding together, with other countries with similar interests, to champion your cause. So, for example, Africa, especially under the current AfCFTA move, if we have a consolidated customs union going beyond a free trade area that the AfCFTA is in Africa, and we have a customs union that is notified and recognized by the WTO, then we can negotiate with one voice, and the sheer strength of our joint economy and our joint clout as a continent will give us leverage. But at the end of the day, remember, my core message is that if you want to be a major player, you don't want to be a marginal player, you need to locate yourself, locate a power slot for yourself, either by your economic progress, the intelligence and the export of your people. For example, that's a clear advantage Nigeria has if we harness it. The fact that we're able to export professional services, to the developed countries of the world, if we keep on that path and harness it, then we know that when Nigeria speaks, stronger countries will listen because they know that the critical aspects of their national life are manned by Nigeria. So somehow you need to locate a power slot for yourself in international thing about whose interest you can keep continuing forever, but nobody will listen to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leonard. We got some messages here I'd like you to respond to. First of all, let me say thanks to, okay, you've responded to Fred's message. Tonyo Lukoya says, Madam Ngozi will do a great job, and I hope the overall interest of Africa will be put into her decision making process. What do you think about that? Thanks, Tony Olukoya. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. Like I said earlier, I believe she's going to pay close attention to issues of concern to Africa. And one of those issues, let me mention again, I've talked about the issue of improving productive capacity in our economy and then improving our capacity to export more. But also the implementation of the AfCFTA is a critical issue facing Africa at the moment. If Africa is able to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area that has come into force right now, it's apart from the multiplier effect in our economy in terms of increasing intra-African trading, increasing productivity and trade among the African countries, the AfCFTA has the capacity to bring African countries together to speak one voice in it, with one voice in the international system. And she has also already made a commitment to support, to extend technical support, for the implementation of the AfCFTA. There are other issues that relate to, for example, the capacity of MSMEs, medium and small, micro, small and medium enterprises to trade in the international system. So it's about simplifying the rules, it's about providing alternative channels of trading like e-commerce and all that. So I'm sure that those issues will rank high on her agenda, just like the issue of agricultural subsidy, that the developed countries use to support their domestic agriculture. Those subsidies are market distorting, most of them, not all of them, because what it then means is that if the US, for example, extends subsidy to the US farmers to produce, and those US farmers are supposed to sell in the same market that the Nigerian farmer who has no subsidy is selling. Now you realize that there's a fundamental market distortion that occurs there. So there's been negotiations, to discipline or to eliminate those market distorting subsidies used by developed countries. And I'm sure that's another issue that is of interest to Africa and to the developing world.
Yeah, thank you. So, in case you're just joining us, this is a Tuesday's edition, and I'm having my guests here, Mr. Leonard Otuonye Ugbajah. He's the Executive Director of Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy, Abuja, Nigeria. Drop your comments, your questions for our guests, and they'll be responding to them. And please do share the video, do share the link so that everyone in your contact can also be part of the program. We're talking about what does Dr. NGOZI Okonjo-IWEALA's leadership at the WTO mean for Nigeria and Africa, and we're here to talk about that. We're still expecting Funke Treasure to join us all the way from Lagos, but then we'll take this one. Leo, if you can see this, could you read it and respond? It's from Kazim Winifred. Could you read
I think
and
that
then
the
respond?
WTO, okay, under Okonjo-IWEALA, should not be partial to America. It is becoming rather glaring that everything is USA over other countries. It's time to explore the potential of other countries. Yes, I keep saying it. So maybe say at the inception, the WTO succeeded the GATT, the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, which was signed and came into force in 1947. At that point, many of the countries that are world economic powers today, China, for example, India, they were not as strong as they are today. Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, and all that. They were not. They were not as strong. So what has happened is that if you look at the historical archives, that led to the whole negotiation and the discussions around the establishment of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1947, it was basically the interest of America and its European allies, especially the EU, especially the UK, over every other person. Now, but over time, if you look at the historical development, these countries, as they attain more economic power, are able to put pressure on the system to accommodate their own interests. So what I'm trying to say is that you cannot by fiat, decide that, America done too much, as we say in our local Nigerian parlance. We can't, the US is taking more than its fair. No, you can't decree it. The only way to counter that perceived or real subservience to American interest is for you to be able to assert your own interest better, for you to have what it takes to counter what the Americans or any other powerful country wants. So yes, as a leader, I'm sure NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA will do her best to maintain a balanced outlook, in negotiations, in decisions. But you also realize that WTO is member driven, so she will eventually tilt to the direction that the members tilt. She cannot overrule or override the decisions of the members. So if on the negotiating floor, in the General Council, for example, or in any of the committees, that the other members allow the US to exercise undue influence, so to say, and it comes to her table, she will not say now because, no, this is not fair. Why must it always be American? No. It's the members that determine what happens, and hers is just to sign off and keep the records for them. So yes, in an ideal world, we will say, why is it always about American interests? But for crying out loud, if you ask that question, my response to you is, then make it your own interest. And that was from my cousin, Omar.
True. After all, he who pays the piper dictates the tune.
Oh yes. Oh yes, and I also believe in the evolution of civilization.
Okay.
So one civilization could be more powerful. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was saying that that this may be the age of
shopping mall. Also, please finish up. Don't worry.
Okay, so I was saying that we're all talking about America and about America. If you look at the history, you've had kingdoms rise, kingdoms fall, and all that. So yes, so it could be we could be at a point in global history where the American the nation of the U.S. of America has a larger than life presence, in the affairs, in global affairs, but it may not always be like that. And I'm one of those who don't really like accepting status quo to say, okay, maybe because the Americans are the most powerful, let me just be a servant. No, I would always explore strategies to also attain power. And I've given you examples of countries who have attained power over the years. Maybe they've not overtaken the US, but in manufacturing, China has overtaken the US, and China is overtaking the US in many things, in technology, in that. So the thing is about the quality of national leadership that you have, the level of vision that your national leaders have that could make them rise above the beggarly position where most developing countries are and begin to assert their power. So, for example, if you had in Nigeria today whose economy is possibly close to or better than that of the US, then we go and we slug it out power to power. So it's a question of how much clout you have, and nobody bestows it on you. It's something you need to take from within the system. And history has shown that a country can rise from relative obscurity, to a place of power and prominence in the international system. That's what we should be gunning for as a nation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Shepi Moore says the Security Council, and then Emmanuel Ugo says child marriage holds women back. We probably would not know Dr. NGOZI Okonjo-IWEALA if she was married off as a girl child. We're still celebrating the International Women's Month, and yes, a lot of times people make remarks that look at NGOZI IWEALA today where she is, look at the Vice President of America today where she is, and they keep making all this. But my concern is, are we as a people consciously also putting infrastructures for the girl child education to thrive?
Yeah, it's an important point you've made. There's the ascendancy of NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA to the WTO DG position is a learning and a teaching moment for us as a people. Not just for Nigeria, but maybe for the world, but more so for Africa, when it comes to how we handle the issue of the girl child. So we'll say NGOZI Okonjo-IWEALA is from a family. Her parents were professors. Then I'll ask, who are her other male siblings, for example? Little or nothing is known about them. So she's become the torch bearer or the name bearer, so to say, of the family. And this challenges the traditional stereotypes we have about the place of the role of the girl child. So some people want to insist that it must be a male child, or the male child must be the one to be trained and all that. But it's a good thing that those things are changing. But situations and moments like these are auspicious moment for us to push that message home, to say that the girl child deserves education, that the girl child deserves every opportunity, just like every other person in the society. In fact, I was having a conversation with some colleagues yesterday around stereotyping when we raise children. So we begin to allocate roles. So the girl child begins to be trained as the person who does the house chores, while the boy child is the person who goes out to play football. And you're beginning at an early stage to set the wrong examples. So we cannot say it, I don't know how loud that we can say it, that you cannot, and I think this was my post on social media on the 8th when we had International Women's Day, you cannot relegate 50% approximately of your population to the background, and then you expect to make progress, because basically you're thinking with one part of your brain, you're seeing with one eye, you're walking with one leg, and you're clapping with one hand, and it can't just work. And you realize that the more we realize this, and consciously, especially as the men, create the space for women to flourish, especially for those of us that have children, starting from our homes, to create the space for the women to flourish, whether your daughter or whether your wife, then you truly be making an impact. But otherwise, we'll just be pontificating.
Okay. Thank you very much, Leo. Funke has joined us back. Hey, good to have you back again. Okay. Um, I'd like you to, if Funke can hear us, I'd like you to. I know you've been following some of the conversations, and sorry for your network going off at some point. But now that you're back, let me just give you a few minutes to make your point, and then I'd wanted you to read a message from Emmanuel Ugu, but Liu has answered that while we were waiting for you. But let me just give you a minute or two to also make your point, considering what we've been saying and some of the comments that people have been dropping. Can you hear me? Okay. I think we're having audio problems with her there. So if she comes back, we'll just have her on again. Leo, let's take this message from Kazim a second time around. It says, personally, I don't think Okonjo-Iweala can do much for Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, even Libya. But Nigeria, not much. We have to want to do better first before any help rendered to us will be useful. What do you think? He's already
That's nail
sounding.
on the head. That's nail on the head. There's no better way to put it, that I mean, another way to look at it is the level of development assistance Nigeria has received over the years. All the donors working in Nigeria, you know, supporting either health, supporting in education, supporting in infrastructure, supporting, you know, and then we're still here where we are at the moment. You know, all of them giving us support in the area of fighting corruption. So the only progress or change you can make is the one that comes from you or the one you've decided to make. So no matter how much support, you know, that Dr. NGOZI OKONJO-IWEALA extends to Nigeria, if the Nigerian leadership, if the politicians in Nigeria are not willing to do the hard work, to do the hard lifting, you know, to make the kind of reforms that will lead to a prosperous economy, then nothing will work. You know, so it will just be like pouring water, pouring maybe a sachet of pure water in a muddled pod, in a muddled pond. You know, it will not make any difference. It will actually just make it wet and it becomes, but it will remain in mud. So that's where we are. We are at a point where our transformation is hinged or can only be hinged on the visionary leadership, on the kind of reforms, you know, in our domestic production capacity. For example, the issue of exporting from Nigeria is a pain in the neck. We don't have appropriate quality infrastructure, you know, that can certify products from Nigeria for export abroad. Like there's something we call global the good is a global good agricultural practices gap, you know, that you need to meet up with if you need to export to certain markets globally. In fact, internationally, that's the standard. Now, you'll be surprised to know that maybe it's just maybe one or two farms or companies in Nigeria that have the gap certification. But if you go to a country like Ghana, for example, you know, it is mainstreamed in their system. That's why many people take commodities like sesame seed, even yam, you know, from Nigeria, cross over to our neighboring West African countries and then get them certified for export. You know, but those things were originally from Nigeria. So we have problems with our systems. We need to first of all address these problems we have domestically in our policies, in ease of doing business, in you could just be doing a business and one local government official will come one day and seal your business for no reason, you know, even without issuing you any notice. So the constraints to our productivity and export are 99% domestic. And I've worked in the trade policy setting for many years to be able to tell you this, you know, that the constraints are essentially domestic. You know, when you resolve those domestic challenges arising from our weak institutional capacity, resulting from our lack of vision in leadership, then you can start talking about, okay, so what are the constraints in the international system? How can we change the rules to favor us more? You know, but mostly what I notice is that we pay undue attention on the rules in the international system, where in fact the problems are local. And that's why I've also given the example of countries who have, you know, succeeded, you know, in the international system, you know, because they addressed the local constraints, you know, to productivity and to export competitiveness.
Yeah, thank you. As you were speaking and you talked about how it's challenging doing business in Nigeria, that one policy, one local government um, could just come up and just say something. It just brings to mind the crypto saga, you know, where a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people were investing. These were um, an industry where young people also found solace, you know, to trade in, just as it is for social media and internet and all that. And then all of a sudden, it just happened. I know it's not our discussion today, and we'll bring you again to talk about this. But hey, we're talking about world economy, and it's I would like you to just chip in a word or two about what you think.
Okay, the issue of crypto is, I'll say maybe a bit more complex. A bit more complex because here you're looking at balancing various interests and risks that are involved in the trading. But again, as has been said by many actors, I don't think a blanket ban, you know, is the right approach. So there's something that is called there are final tools you can use to address emerging market conditions. For example, emerging innovation. For example, you can use regulatory forbearance, so which basically means you're looking at it, but well, let's keep watching, let's keep understanding this more. You can also use regulatory sandboxes. Using a sandbox means that, okay, you create an environment, possibly pick some players, or bring all the players within a specific ecosystem, and then try to work with them, understand how that innovation is emerging, understand the risk, then you're able to tailor regulation to be able to address the risk. But because if you're asking me, I'll tell you there are real risk. There are real risk around money laundering, about terrorism financing, and about that, but you don't then throw out the baby with the bathwater because there are risks. So it's the more difficult work. The easier work to do actually is to just throw everything into the air, and let it go. But the more difficult work to do is to then craft a solution, that would not just kill the market, but allow the market to thrive while protecting or guarding against the identified risk. That is what we didn't do. And I think that was what the vice president was trying to advocate for, that we should follow a more cautious approach to regulate that enterprise or that innovation called cryptocurrency, rather than just burying it overnight. And that has caused a lot of dislocation in the market.
Okay. As we begin to wrap up, I'd like you to also tell us briefly what Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy does, and how we could get to reach you. People who are watching right now would like to do a few continuation of this topic, or would like to have your services. Where should they be finding you, on the social media?
Okay, thank you. So at Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy, CTBA for short, what we try to do is to promote collective understanding and advocacy towards evidence-based policy. So we're saying basically, before you make policy, especially in the trade and economic governance arena, you want to make sure that your policy is grounded in evidence. You want to make sure that your policy is participatory. That means everybody whose interest is affected by that policy has an opportunity to make an input into that policy. So our approach is to do research, is to disseminate the research, is to educate people, is to engage with stakeholders, engage with the people in government, the people in the National Assembly, to put forward positions that we think are properly reasoned, and agreed, and in the best interest of all the stakeholders. In fact, tomorrow we are having we're flagging off a series of presentations based on the report that we did. That report focused on mapping all the policies, laws, regulations that affect the competitiveness and trade of micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria. We did that in partnership with GIZ, a project called NICOP, and we're going to be flag up the presentation tomorrow with the main report, and then we have 6 technical sessions focused on different aspects of that report. So basically what this report has done is to analyze policies, analyze laws, and even bills before the National Assembly, analyze them in terms of their functionality. Are they still relevant? Are they making things easier for businesses or making things more difficult for businesses? What are the international best practices in that field? Are there areas where we need regulation that we don't have, or are there regulations that we just need to throw away? For example, I keep citing this example. We have a law in Nigeria that makes it an offense for you to export yam, to export beans, or to export cassava from Nigeria. It's a law, it's there, the Export Prohibition Act, and at the same time, we've had governments, successive governments that are promoting the export of yam, promoting the export of beans, promoting the export of cassava and cassava flour, but we have a law that says you cannot export it. So why do we allow such laws to exist in our statute book, and then we're acting contrary to them? Instead of going back, we have laws that that governed the era of commodity boards, when we have produce commodity boards buying produce from farmers and exporting them, and even making it offense for an individual to export without getting license from the commodity boards. But we don't have the commodity boards any longer. But those laws are still there. So we're saying we need specific legislative action to reform our laws to make them attuned to the contemporary reality of our economic life. So we have that report. We're starting tomorrow. You can link up with us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Trade Advocacy, at trade_advocacy. That's our Twitter handle. And once you get to at trade.advocacy, you can also connect with me on Twitter. My personal handle is at learning Leo, learning like someone who is learning, at learning Leo. That's my own Twitter handle. So connect with us on Facebook. You can search Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy. If you also use that handle on LinkedIn, you will also find us, and then you can connect with the things that we are doing. We run an evidence-based advocacy on the issues that are of interest to us, but relating mostly to trade, regional integration, competition policy, issues related to the digital economy, and all that.
Okay, thank you very much. As we wrap up now, what would be your last words of advice? How time really flies. So, in 1 minute.
Yes, I'll say the ascendancy of Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA to the position of DG of WTO has also placed a responsibility on Nigeria to act more responsibly in managing our trade policy, because most of the things we do before and nobody would look at us, or nobody would take any notice. Any trade policy measure that Nigeria takes today, whether it is banning crypto, whether it is banning import of certain items, whether it is closing our border, any trade policy measure we take today will receive more attention than it had received in the past, and then possibly lead to dispute settlement proceeding at the WTO. Those will be my last words. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Leo, for that. Got this message here, and it's from Madam Dottie, and it says, I missed it again, oh, but it's okay. The videos are there. You can watch after the show, and you could drop your comments and all of that, and it will still be there. I really want to thank everyone who joined us, everyone who sent messages. Thank you so much. And yes, to my guests, Mr. Leonard Otuonye Ugbajah, the Executive Director of Center for Trade and Business Environment Advocacy. Thank you so much. He's residing in Abuja, Nigeria. And also thanks to Lady Funke Treasure, Lead Consultant, Yellow Bloom Consulting, Lagos, Nigeria. Unfortunately, network couldn't let her join us. But then we'll bring her again some other time. She's always a regular on this show, but I'm wondering why network is behaving like this these days for her. But it's okay. Lady Lady Funke Treasure. Maybe we will add the S to your name, Treasures, so that you could have network to join us. So today, yes, we were talking about the position of Dr. NGOZI Okondjo-IWEALA as the DG of World Trade Organization, and what it means, what it entails, what is needed for Nigeria and Africa, what it portrays rather for Africa and Nigeria. And that was what we were talking about. I know I will bring Leo some other time to also talk about crypto and other trade relationships, with countries, how countries can find a way of deepening their trade relationship. With this insecurity really happening, it's a Herculean one, and I think we'll be coming back to talk about that. Okay. Madam Dottie also said, this is the last message I'll read before I leave. We close the program. Madam Dottie says, I agree with the closing point, and interventions have to be holistic. Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Dottie. And this is to also tell everyone that Adele's page is up. Yeah. So hashtag Adele Shimi is up, and you could search that on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I know we'll be bringing Madam Dottie pretty soon to talk about Adele's modeling career and how it's been launched and all that. But we'll do that maybe ending of the month by God's grace. The first week of April, we'll just bring Madam Dottie to also talk about that. Um, I wanted to read that as the last text, but as the last message, but another one just fell in here. Itoro Jimmy just said a big thank you to Leonard. Well, Leonard, thank you very much. Yes, like I said before you did your last comment, Itoro Jimmy said a big thank you to Leonard. And yes, Itoro, we also had Lady Funke Treasure, just that she went off somewhere in the program. So this is the size of the show for Tuesday. This Saturday we'll be bringing Haida Hamzo from Iraq. He's our guest for this Saturday coming. We'll be looking at a few things on social impact and what we can do as citizens to make social impact. It's going to be another wonderful time on Shagalinku. So stay here. You'll be getting the flyers soon within the week. And then just to let you know that Haida Hamzos will be our next guest on Saturday, all the way from Iraq. We'll be looking at a few more things, and we're still celebrating the International Women's Month. So we'll be looking at a few things on women issues and how it can also be tied to social impact. Thanks everyone for joining us. Really have to leave now. So many messages coming up here, but let me still read this one from Ijoma Mirabel Eburike. It says, "Thank you very much, Leonard. Um, I really learned a lot." This from Ijoma Mirabel Eburike. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Many messages are coming in, but hey, we need to leave now. We need to really leave. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Ambassador Emmanuel Gabari. Till I see you all, God willing, on Saturday for the Saturday's episode of the show. Stay safe. Keep keeping on, no matter what you're going through. Just be positive minded and believe that tough times don't last.